have ordinances on second reading. Ordinance 061403, and ordinance to amend the zoning ordinance of the city of New Brunswick, chapter 17 zoning, to be tavern as is prohibited use in C5 zones. Ordinance 402, an ordinance to amend and supplement and revise general ordinances of the city of New Brunswick, chapter 10, vehicles and traffic, schedule 25, no parking, certain hours. This is on Eastern Avenue. We have ordinances on first reading. We have ordinance 071403, is an ordinance to amend and supplement and revise general ordinances of the city of New Brunswick, chapter 10, vehicles and traffic, schedule 39, parking zones for handicapped persons. Delete one handicapped parking zone, one of my driveways, and add one handicapped parking zone, one shared service. Ordinance 071404 has been held at the request of the city attorney. Ordinance 071405 is an ordinance to amend and supplement the revised general ordinances of the city of New Brunswick, chapter 10, vehicles and traffic, schedule 28. Stopping or standing prohibited during certain hours. This is on Wall Street. Ordinance 071406 is an ordinance to amend and supplement the revised general ordinances of the city of New Brunswick, chapter 10, vehicles and traffic, schedule 29, parking time limit on certain streets. This is in reference to Rockers and Lakeland football games parking. We're going into resolutions. We have resolution 071431, approve agenda amendments. Resolution 432, approve payroll from 6/21/14 to 7/4/14. Resolution 433, authorize refund for redeemed tax sales certificates. Resolution 434, approve amendment to resolution 031408. The reason is to pay additional legal fees in the amount of $799 to Benedict and Altman to Police Director Anthony Capullo in the matter of Victor Rodriguez versus the city of New Brunswick, from 1,105 to 1,904. Resolution 435, approve amendment to resolution 061442. The reason is to pay additional legal fees in the amount of $1,450 to Lawrence Biederman for Detective Christopher Bonheimer in the matter of Rodriguez versus New Brunswick, from 3,842 to 5,244.50. Resolution 436. Approve amendment to resolution 051420. The reason is to pay additional legal fees in the amount of $1,224 to Lawrence Biederman, police officer Daniel Mazan in the matter of Deloach, city of Barry, the state of, versus the city of New Brunswick, from $4,581.50 to $5,805.50. Resolution 437, approve amendment to resolution 051422. The reason is to pay additional legal fees in the amount of $892.50 to Lawrence Biederman. This is for Lieutenant Michael Bobadilla in the matter of Oswaldo Hernandez, Jorge Lopez Nieves, and Jose Granados Joya versus the city of New Brunswick, from $9,188.50 to $10,081. Resolution 438. Approve person-to-person transfer of liquor license. This is for liquor license 1214-32-102-010 for New Safe LLC, from New Safe LLC to Darrow LLC, 302 George Street. Resolution 439. Approve request for use of city property. This is requested by Iglesia Las Manos del Alfarero. The location is Wood Memorial Park. This is for preaching and singing on Sunday, July 27, 2014. From 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Resolution 440, authorized purchase by police department under state contract 8-81338 from Lanigan Associates for one bulletproof vest for the police department, not to exceed $740 and $30. Resolution 441, authorized purchase by police department under state contract 8-83909 from Motorola Solutions Inc. for radio parts and accessories not to exceed $375. Resolution 442, approval of off-premise raffle, 50/50 at 222 Livingston Avenue, for the Brunswick Elks Lodge, number 324, on December 13, 2014. Resolution 443, authorized by police purchased by Police Department on the state contract 8-7553, computer contract M-0483 from Wireless Electronics, Inc., doing business as Wireless Communication and Electronics, for one softbook not to exceed $2,261.13. Resolution 444, approve request for use of city sidewalk, requested by Councilman Blake Fleming. The location is 259 Jersey to Wright and Ransom, Wright and Sanford to Joyce River Avenue, Martin Luther King Corner, for a march followed by street dedication of Martin Luther King Jr. Corner. This is on Sunday, August 24th, 2014, from 3:30 p.m. to 6 p.m., with a rain date of Sunday, September 7th, from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Resolution 445, authorized purchase of installation services by Police Department under state contract 8-75583, computer contract N-0483. This is from Wireless Electronics, Inc., doing business as Wireless Communication and Electronics for mounting hardware and accessories for police vehicles, not to exceed $7,085.80. Resolution 446, approve request for use of city sidewalk, requested by Restoration Outreach Ministries. The location is the sidewalk at the Brunswick train station for handing out of religious literature. On Tuesdays, July 22nd through September 30th, 2014, from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., and on Fridays from July 18th to September 26th, 2014, from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. Resolution 447, approve request for use of city property requested by Uptown Crime Watch, Sheriff Smith. The location is Recreation Park for a community family fun day on Saturday, August 9, 2014, with a rain date of Saturday, August 16, 2014, from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. Resolution 448, authorized property deed for boarded up security at 310 Townsend Street, and the amount is $234.51. Resolution 449, authorized property deed for boarded up security at 1 Landing Place, and the amount is $2,443.51. Resolution 450, authorized property deed for boarded up security at 19 Camden Avenue, and the amount is $2,178.16. Resolution 451. Approve amendment to Resolution 011477. This is water utilities. The reason is approved name change for Siemens Water Technologies, LLC, to EWT Holdings III Corporation, doing business as Evoqua Water Technologies. This is non-control. Resolution 452. Approve award of contract and rejection of bid with Wireless Communication for radio maintenance for the fire department. The term is 12 months, starting on July 12, 2015, and ending on July 16, 2015, which can be extended on a yearly basis for up to 2 years, 2 additional years, not to exceed $12,980. Resolution 453, authorized purchase by Division of Fire Safety on the state contract 8-83909, Motorola Solutions, Inc., for 4 portable radios and accessories not to exceed $5,682. Resolution 554, authorized resolution to refund funds to Verizon. The reason the city of New Brunswick was paid by Verizon in error. Resolution 455, authorized release of site inspection fees to Mr. John Maggie for Bulgaria Urban Renewal, Meyer Bank. Resolution 456, approval amendment of Resolution 071418, change order number 1K, with Payton Elevator Company for Remsen Avenue Fire Museum and Community Center. The amount is $1,800, and approval of this change order will not constitute an increase of 20% or more than the amount of the original contract. Resolution 457, approve ABC liquor license renewals 2014-2015. Resolution 458, approve award of contract with Gold Star Group, doing business as Howard Johnson Express Inn, for emergency housing shelter. This is for a period of 12 months, starting on July 17, 2014, and ending on July 16, 2015, and thereafter for an additional 12 months, should the city so desire. Resolution 459, approve request for use of city property requested by Nation of Islam, Mohammed Mosque number 85 65. The location is Fifth Park for a community festival and charity basketball day to promote unity in the city of New Brunswick. This is on Saturday, August 16, 2014, from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. Resolution 460, approve amendment of Resolution 041-419. The reason is electrical work in the training room at the fire headquarters in the amount of $3,400, and electrical maintenance and repairs with Facility Solutions Group, not to exceed $3,400. Approval of this change order would not constitute an increase of 30% or more of the amount of the original contract. Resolution 461, authorize release of site performance guarantee bond number SU 403-3622 in the amount of $160,400, and the balance of site inspection fees in the amount of $623.68 to Lane Valenti's Industries for Sears Road lighting. Resolution 462, approval at the request of the city engineer. Resolution 463, approve execution of memorandum of understanding with American Water Operations and Maintenance, Inc. for the operation of the water utility North Brunswick. Resolution 464, approve request for use of city property requested by Unity Square, Catholic Charity. Location is Christian Park for the National Night Out Neighborhood Festival, focusing on crime prevention on Tuesday, August 5th, 2014, from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Resolution 465, authorize refund to U.S. Bank custodian for fees funding in the amount of, is that 1,000, Mr. Hunter? 1,865.6685 against 41 Central Avenue. Resolution 466, approve relaxation of the city noise ordinance requested by Joseph Mingoli and Sons for the reason 46 Avenue, repair the existing underground sanitary sewer system in the intersection of Hamilton and College Avenue. Date and time, 24 hours a day from July 28th, starting at 7 a.m. to July 31st, 2014, ending at approximately 3 p.m. Resolution 467, approve relaxation of the city noise ordinance requested by Joseph Mingoli and Son. The reason is workers under knowledge install hot water heating, distributional piping to the new owners college and academic building, Bishop Place. And the days are Saturday, July 26, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Sunday, July 27, from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Alternate dates and times, Saturday, August 2nd, 2014, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Sunday, August 3rd, from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Resolution 468, authorize tax collector to transfer overpayment of several tax and utility accounts. And Resolution 469, authorize fourth amendment for the redevelopment agreement with Gordon MAB in Brunswick. This is in reference to 131 Jersey Avenue. At this time, meeting is called to order. With the clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Anderson.
Here.
Council Vice President Egan.
Here.
Councilmember Fleming.
Here.
Councilmember Garlotti. Present. Council President Escobar.
Here. Please be advised that the notice requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act has been complied with and satisfied in that the annual notice gives sufficient notice of the time and place and conduct of all public meetings of the Municipal Council of the City of New Brunswick has been filed with the City Clerk, has been placed on an appropriate bulletin board in the lobby of City Hall in Brunswick, New Jersey, and has been transmitted to the official newspaper for the City of New Brunswick, namely the Home Newspaper.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, let's pause for a moment to honor those Americans and Afghans who have lost their lives in the war in Afghanistan. Thank you. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of May 21st.
Second.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Council Vice President Egan.
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming.
Yes.
Councilmember Garlotti.
Aye.
Council President Escobar.
Yes. At this time, we have two ordinances on second reading. Ordinance 06143 is an ordinance to amend the zoning ordinance of the city of Brunswick, chapter 17, zoning, the Beach Tavern as a permitted use in C-5 zones. Does anybody in the council wish to talk about this specific ordinance? At this time, any member of the public who wishes to address the council specifically on this ordinance, please come forward, state your name and address. And just because we have so many people, so that probably want to be heard, so that you have 5 minutes to address the council.
Okay, great, thank you very much. Is this on?
Yes.
My name is Ann Studholm. I'm an attorney with Post Pollock, Goodsell, McNeil, and Stroud Clerk. Our office is in Roseland and Princeton. Our Princeton office is 134 Nassau Street, Princeton, New Jersey, 08542. And I represent Paso Simon Realty LLC. They're the owners of the Bennigans at the intersection of 18 and Route 1. They had asked that this second reading be put off so that they could avail themselves of the advice of a zoning attorney, and that's me. And I have had very nice conversations with Mr. Hamilton and with Mr. Patterson, and I understand what you're trying to do. And my client has one slight concern or problem. We would prefer that you actually not adopt this ordinance, but if you do, we will work with Mr. Patterson to make sure that it doesn't prevent what we feel would be an excellent use. My understanding is the neighbors are all in favor of it, and that you are as well. And my understanding is that the tavern use, as defined and also as conceived, does not exist in the zone. It's permitted, but there aren't any in the C5. You have, most of your other commercial zones do permit taverns and restaurants. And your definition of tavern has a typo in it. It cites the state liquor law, Title 33, intoxicating liquors. People call it the ABC statute. And it says tavern is defined in 33:12. I presume that's a typo, and that what it was referring to was 33:1-12. And that is the section on what are called plenary retail consumption licenses. Those are Class C level licenses, but restaurants as well as other entities which the liquor law doesn't define, but other entities that are not restaurants can have them. And they're what we all know as bars. And I understand that part of the problem is a bar can be Jimmy's Corner Bar, where you go to get a drink. It can also be a big piece of wooden furniture within a restaurant where you go to get a drink. And that the intention is not to prohibit that second kind of bar. And as Glenn told me, that's why you call it a tavern in your zoning ordinance. And it is specifically that pedestrian-oriented, often very local, neighborhood-oriented, highly alcohol-oriented use, which is sought to be prohibited. But because of the way restaurant is defined in your statute, because of the way tavern is defined in your statute, we thought it would be better at least to have real clarity and make a record on the record so that you guys could all know. Again, we'd rather have it not removed because we do think that there's a little bit of lack of clarity. Are you a restaurant or are you a tavern? If they're both permitted in the zone, it doesn't matter. Whatever you are, you're fine. But if tavern is explicitly removed, then the question of are you a restaurant comes to the fore. The way the ABC defines restaurant is very similar to how you define restaurant. You also have drive-in, drive-through, take-out, fast food, other restaurants, but your definition of restaurant tracks extremely closely, practically word for word with the ABC. With the addition of, you add a phrase talking about food and drink, which they don't have to have because, of course, they're only talking about licensed premises. You also have a section on takeout ice cream, said this is not what we're talking about. Again, that's irrelevant to the ABC. The ABC in section 33:1, I hope I'm getting it right, -12.32, makes the distinction between restaurant and all other types of entities that could have a Class C license. It says a restaurant has an adequate kitchen, serves food, very similar to your definition. And the reason that the ABC cares about it is that if you have a restaurant, you can actually have more than 2 liquor licenses. If you have a non-restaurant Class C, what you would call a tavern, you can only have 2 liquor licenses. They don't want large chains of those. But obviously there are large chains of Houlihan's, TGI Fridays, On the Borders. You have some of those already in your zone. They all have big bars in the second sense of a bar in them, and they're fine. They already exist in the zone. My client actually has approval for a reopening, a rebranding of the Bennigan's, but with a very similar layout, a bar and food around it. That's not a problem. Glenn has reassured me that's a restaurant. I'm very comfortable that's a restaurant, and you have no intention of saying that's illegal. I think the best way to get at this is if I said, I'm going down to Jimmy's bar for supper. You might look at me and say, well, I hope you don't have a problem. If I said, I'm going to Houlihan's for supper, that's fine. Go to Houlihan's for supper. You might go to Houlihan's, say, after a day of work, we're all going to meet at Houlihan's for a drink. You don't have to have supper there. And in Glenn's zone report on this to you, he said, more likely in a restaurant to have food connected with drink. I think that was appropriate. It's more likely. It's not required. With this, I still... I'm almost there with time. We would still rather that you didn't adopt it because we're afraid it will raise the question. But if you do adopt it, we will work with Glenn and probably the zoning board to make sure that some effect you don't intend isn't later on read into this. Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Okay, public wishes to address?
General question. So what's the intent? Is it a bar or is it a restaurant? I mean, what's the intent for the use? I mean, like if you had to give an example, of something now. That's not that exists right now.
I didn't know who this was.
Council, are you referring specifically to the Bennigan site or just in general?
Yeah, since we're talking about that, that's the thing that's in the room.
Well, what Bennigan's was a restaurant. Everything that has a liquor license in the Route 1 area is a restaurant. Houlihan's, Asia, and so forth, they're restaurants.
Right.
To define what a tavern is.
No, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I mean, for this site, this site, but what they intend on using this site for?
They have an existing approval.
Right.
To do something called Wildfire Grill, which has the exact same floor plan as the Bennigan's.
Okay.
Now, they've said they may come back in for some amendments for that, but this ordinance does not just apply to this site. This is for this whole zone down there. But I understand they want to do some expansion to it, but not a huge expansion to it. And from the conversations I have, it sounds like a restaurant, similar to Houlihan's or Bennigan's or something like that. You're also going, what is a tavern and so forth, to put it in local New Brunswick terms. Kelly's is a tavern. Ellenwich is a tavern. Houlihan's is not. Tumulty's is not. They're restaurants. Those kinds of places are appropriate out there, but we think because of the highway location, well, it's not a place you walk to and so forth, you really have to kind of get in your car to go there, that it's appropriate to have restaurants if you're going to be serving alcohol out there. So you at least have the opportunity to get a little something in your stomach rather than just going out there and having a few beers and a few shots.
Any other questions?
I have a question. What does our council think we should do in light of what this attorney is asking us to do? What is your advice for the council?
My advice is that I think Mr. Patterson has made it very clear what's involved, what should be involved, and that this amendment ought to be adopted. And that would be my recommendation.
Thank you.
Yes.
Also, there's no change, as you said, to the tables. There's no dance floor. They're not taking away any tables, basically. So pretty much close to what it was with Bennigan, so therefore.
If you're referring just to the Bennigan's, again, that's what I'm saying. This ordinance is for the whole zone, not just Bennigan's. But they got approval 18 months, 2 years ago, and they essentially submitted the exact floor plan of the existing Bennigan's. Doesn't mean they can't come back in and change it around, but what they have approval for now is for a restaurant. It specifically refers that they are allowed to serve alcoholic beverages there. You've approved a liquor license, person-to-person and place-to-place transfer, or actually it's person-to-person transfer there. So they can, if they want to open up something that was like the Bennigan's, they could do it tomorrow. If they want to expand it somewhat, but still be a restaurant that generally operates to serve food, they can do that. They can also have drinks. It can have a bar structure in it. I think all the licensed restaurants in town probably have a bar structure in it, for at least a few people to either, wait and have a drink while they're waiting to be seated at the table and so forth.
Thank you, Ms. Patterson. Any other questions from the public? Move the ordinance.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Council Vice President Egan.
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming.
Yes.
Councilmember Garlotti.
Aye.
Council President Escobar.
Yes, we have ordinance 071402. It's an ordinance to amend and supplement the revised general ordinances of the city of New Brunswick, chapter 10, vehicles and traffic, schedule 25, no parking on certain hours, this is on Eastern Avenue. Any comments from the council members? Any comments from the public on this particular ordinance? Having none?
Move the ordinance.
Second.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Council Vice President Egan.
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming.
Yes.
Councilmember Garlotti.
Aye.
Council President Escobar.
Yes. Ordinances on first reading, we have ordinance 071403, it's an ordinance to amend and supplement the revised general ordinances of the city of New Brunswick, chapter 10, vehicles and traffic, schedule 39, parking zones for handicap. We are deleting one handicap parking zone at 101 Dry Place, and we are adding one handicap parking zone at 101 Chester Circle.
Move the ordinance setting down August 6th for public hearing, same date to be advertised.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Council Vice President Egan.
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming.
Yes.
Councilmember Garlotti.
Aye.
Council President Escobar.
Yes. Ordinance 404 has been held at the request of the city attorney. We have ordinance 071405, it's an ordinance to amend and supplement the revised general ordinances of the city of New Brunswick, chapter 10, vehicles and traffic, schedule 28, stopping or standing prohibited during certain hours on Wall Street.
Move the ordinance setting down August 6th for public hearing, same date to be advertised.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Council Vice President Egan.
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming.
Yes.
Councilmember Garlotti.
Aye.
Council President Escobar.
Yes. Ordinance 406 is an ordinance to amend and supplement the revised general ordinances of the city of New Brunswick, chapter 10, vehicles and traffic, schedule 29, parking time limit on certain street. This is in reference to Robert's Saturday home football game.
Move the ordinance setting down August 6th for public hearing, same date to be advertised.
Second.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Council Vice President Egan.
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming.
Yes.
Councilmember Garlotti.
Aye.
Council President Escobar.
Yes. We're moving on to resolutions. We have resolution 431 to resolution 469. Any member of the council wishes to address any of these particular resolutions? At this time, any member of the public who wishes to address the council on these particular resolutions, please come forward, state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes to address the council.
Good evening, Madam Council President. Charles Cradaville, 6th Ward, New Brunswick. I want to start by saying that I'm proud to be an American, I'm proud to be a New Jerseyan, I'm proud to be a New Brunswicker, but I also am aware that I live in the most corrupt city, in the most corrupt county, in the most corrupt state in the Union. And I won't stand for it. I won't stand for it. This agreement with American Water was done behind your back, Madam Council President, and done behind the backs of the public by a person who did not have the guts to come here today and defend that action. I humbly ask, please do not pass the resolution to endorse the memorandum of understanding with American Water because we have a water director who signed that agreement and he's not here to defend it. I don't think it's, I've tried my best to obtain as much information about this deal as possible, and I've asked all the right people, and I am still not satisfied. I do not think you should be satisfied with this agreement. And I do want to ask what would happen if tonight you choose to table this resolution or vote against it. What would happen?
Then we will have to shut down the water department. And it will affect the residents of the city of New Brunswick because we need license operators, and that's why we are doing this interview.
So you mean to tell me that the agreement was signed by the mayor and Why wasn't it put to a vote of the council that day?
It was a, what did it?
The day it was signed, why didn't you have a meeting, you had a meeting that night, why wasn't it put to the
It
vote
was,
then?
I think it's at the time, we didn't have the time to figure it out, but I would tell you this, Mr. Claro. This has been done, it's well thought. This is nothing that, and the ultimate priority and the ultimate goal of all of this is to continue providing the citizens of New Brunswick with high quality water. This is not something that we plan. You know, we have 2 employees that were the ones who have the licenses required by the state to be able for us to continue operating the water plant. And this happened, one right after the other. And it was in one of those situations that you said either you shut down and the public and the residents are going to be affected, and you don't want that, you want us to continue having water, right? Or we have to look for something that is in the meantime the best solution, because it takes time to find operators. And so it was one of those. Either you make a decision, and he made that decision, and it was to the best possible situation that we could have for our residents at this time.
If that's true, if this truly is the best possible solution, why can't the mayor come here and defend it?
He doesn't have to defend his decision. You could call him, Mr. Carroll, and talk to him. He had met with some people from the public right here today. He was able to meet with them, who have some concerns also. So you have the same opportunity.
Well, I appreciate that, but if he respected the democratic process, he would come to this meeting. Could I ask, when was the last time the mayor gave the State of the City address?
When was the last time the mayor gave that? It was I was going to say,
That has nothing to do with the resolution.
about this time, so maybe even if you have a question about that, ask him. You have seen him in several occasions, so you should ask him about that.
I should ask him what the State of the City is when I see him.
When was the last time he gave? If that's what you asked?
I'm just saying, there's a real problem
So
here.
you're close to it, and then you won't have any chance.
It's the city council's job to be a check on the mayor and to not just be a rubber stamp. I need you to do this for me. I need you to step up tonight and vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crown.
Marge Kerber, irate resident of 2 Comstock Street here in New Brunswick. First, I would like to thank Councilmember Anderson for his email. I don't know if he read my reply, but first of all, I think you probably should proofread your emails before they go out, because this email went out to Dear Kerber, and I don't think that's a proper salutation.
Did you see the email that was sent to me?
Ma'am, excuse me, let's just.
Okay, but anyway, but secondly, I replied to that email as such. I replied to this email as such. I'm just making a suggestion that you might
I
want to do.
understand, but right now we're talking about.
Okay. Right. I just find it very remarkable, okay, that the mayor takes it upon himself to become acting director, but he doesn't have the licenses needed to be director, okay, which in the email it stated that they needed to have. And secondly, that these 2 people that left the water company, and I'm assuming that they left really quickly, they didn't give 2 weeks' notice, all of a sudden work for American Water Company, who we're signing the agreement with. I think that's very remarkable, don't you? I mean, I think it's like really remarkable.
I just want to ask you,
And I'm being sarcastic, I know that, because this whole thing has an underlying...
Excuse me, I just want to correct you on something. Only one person is working for that company, no?
Oh, just Frank?
Just Prime Minister Marat.
Oh, okay. And he gave 2 weeks' notice.
That's.
Okay, so
No,
the mayor waited for the last day of those 2 weeks to sign them.
Mr. Lovely,
That's factually incorrect. He gave 3 weeks' notice, and he stayed an extra 2 weeks to help us transition.
doesn't say.
Okay, so in that meantime, you can find a replacement in 5 weeks.
That is correct.
It is.
How long did it take to hire Frank?
That was so nice.
Months.
Months? Oh, okay, all right.
With the
I
help-
find
with
it
the
also
help- with the
interesting
help
that I
of,
called the water company
I
like
just-
2 weeks ago, and asked for him, and they said he was out of the office. I guess he was out of the office permanently. But anyway, I just, I don't know, I find this whole thing a very large coincidence, and I, along with Charlie, would urge you not to pass this. Again, I don't know why the mayor's not here either. There's even an environmental commission meeting after this, and he's not going to show up for that. And I mean, I just find it very undemocratic, okay, and very disrespectful to the residents of New Brunswick. That I didn't even read about this in the Star Ledger or the Home News. I had to read about it, okay? Not that there's anything wrong with New Brunswick today, but because he usually gives us stuff that we don't read anywhere else. I wonder why. But I just am amazed about these coincidences. I really am. Like all of a sudden, Frank decides to work for American Water Company. Gee, the same time that we're going to privatize our water. Isn't that interesting?
We are not privatizing our water.
Yes, we are. Don't. You know, I can see this coming already. I can read the markings on the wall. I've lived in New Brunswick for over 25 years. I know how you guys operate. And prove it if we're not going to privatize. Prove it, and the next time I come here, when it's on the agenda to privatize, that you turn it down. Thank you.
Certainly the emails, and I responded to every one, were all addressed to me as Dear Anderson. So I thought perhaps that's the way they wanted to respond, so I just simply did that. So no offense taken, I didn't take it to me, but since that was clear, I hope you are the ones who wrote it. But obviously I wrote back indicating that I was against any privatization. I don't see it coming this way. That's not what we're doing. And I think some people have been misinformed.
I just, sir, before you start, do you have a question? I don't want to hear a song. Do you have a question?
Is this mic, well, does it count if I ask if the mic's on?
It's on. I just want to make sure that you have a question for this council.
I do have a question.
Regarding the...
Yeah, well, I'm a nationally touring folk musician. I live right here in New Brunswick, and I wrote a verse to a patriotic song about New Brunswick. And the question is, can I perform it?
I just need a question.
Yeah!
Gotta pay attention to here, okay? Before you start, I ask you, do you have a question?
Yeah, I asked if I could sing a patriotic song.
And could you please just ask a question at this time so that way everybody can have and avoid the song. And your name, please, and your
Well, my song's shorter than the conversation we've already been having at this moment. But my name is Spook Andy.
And I'm telling you the order.
Sing your guns. Sing your song. Sing your guns.
I can't sing if you're not going to let me sing. I can't sing if you're not going to
Excuse me, if we are not in order, we're gonna have to, we will not be able to give the opportunity to everybody else to talk. So either we follow the order that we have, or we have to just close the session.
What is the order that we have?
And I'm asking you to please just have a question, about the resolution that you have. This is specific.
Oh, the song mentions the resolution.
On which resolution, sir?
Excuse me? The one to privatize the New Brunswick border.
Can I have the question that you have, please?
Yeah. The question is. So I think it's pretty cool. I did some research and found out that New Brunswick is surrounded by water.
Sir, you are in order. Go sit down and come back when you're ready to have a question.
Everybody gets 5 minutes.
Here's the question.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
Council Vice President Egan?
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Councilmember Garlotti?
Aye.
Council President Escobar?
Resolution will pass. Thank you.
I didn't get a resolution.
If we are,
When's the election?
we are gonna be, at this point, if we are not gonna be able to, you cannot talk, I'm seeing this one at this point. If you wanna ask a question, fine, if not, I'm gonna have to close the meeting. That's all.
All right, then I will.
Can I have somebody else, or just have your question?
No, I'll walk up. I'm not going to close the meeting. So, That's really a shame. So when I go on tour this summer, I'm going to Canada too. I'm actually doing a world tour. I'm going to say that I wrote this patriotic verse about New Brunswick, and the city council refused to have it sung at the city council meeting.
What happened to public comment? Without public comment?
Excuse me, if we continue to discuss.
Did you just pass the resolution on the water privatization
Because you.
without hearing public comment?
We're going to close on this right now, and we are able to do that, especially if you are not following the order of you. People were out of order. We cannot conduct, and you know this, we cannot conduct a meeting if we don't follow the order.
I'm really at a loss of words. I think that something that comes to me is a phrase by Thomas Paine, and that which is easily achieved is held with less esteem. And I feel like that our water system, that we haven't paid as much attention to it as we should. I think that's true of many of the residents. I think it's true of many elected officials and the regulators in the state who are responsible for overseeing this system. Our water system has been plagued with tremendous problems that have been uncovered in the last 6 months to a year that have happened years before. And the fact that the council just voted on this without taking comments from the public and demanding a question be asked when this is an opportunity for comments is also concerning to me. I would like to state that this is a privatization, and you can say that it's not, but you're essentially taking a public service and it's now being administered by a private entity. That is what privatization is. It is a management contract that the city is entering into with a private entity where the city used to provide those licenses by public employees. They are now being provided by a private company. That is what privatization is. And so I don't know if you think that myself and the members of the public don't understand what privatization is. You can tell us it's not, and then we'll be like, oh, okay, and walk away. But it is privatization. I don't want to get in a semantical argument with you, though. What I want to do is I want to figure out how we got into this mess. This mess is going to cost the city. We're going to pay nearly $1 million annualized in what we're paying now, probably for a 12-month contract with American Water. That's money that could be invested in New Brunswick and could be invested in our water system. If you look at what we'd be paying staff and other things, it's probably close to $500,000 a year that is essentially being siphoned out of the city of New Brunswick to a private water company. That's not something that anyone should take lightly. We need to find out how we got in that mess, that this money's now being siphoned off by a private water company. There's been a sudden exit of 3 water employees. We need to find out, why did 3 water employees leave all of a sudden? Are they related to each other? Are there personnel issues? Are there management issues? Is it we're not paying people enough? Is it issues with the shifts that they're working? Why is it that 3 employees left immediately? That's something that anybody who's in charge of something should question when all of a sudden there's an exodus of employees like that all of a sudden. And I think that we need to get to the bottom of that. And I think that people need to be held accountable for the problems in the water system. There's been no accountability for anyone for any of these problems at any level. And we need to have an investigation into what caused these problems and how we got here, so we can make sure we don't get here again. Because we cannot afford to siphon off $500,000 a year to a private water company. The council needs to make sure that we get a plan to get our public water system back under control. We didn't have an acting water director for nearly 5 years. We cannot wait 5 years to bring these licenses back in-house. I understand that the mayor's in the process of interviewing people right now. You need to be on top of him. I believe the council needs to demand that a plan be created with benchmarks that are measurable and very clear for how we will extricate this private water company out of the city's infrastructure. And that any contract that we shouldn't be entering into contract anyway, that any contract you sign into should be laid out in a way that allows us to exit that contract piecemeal when we bring on the necessary staff and licenses for that contract, so that we're not double paying American Water to provide a service that we can do internally to bring more savings to the city. We need to We need to implement the electronic monitoring system and then bring that back in-house. There's no reason for us to continue indefinitely sending our data out to American Water and paying for them to do that service when we can train staff to do that. So as soon as we can do that, we need to do that. And that system is supposed to be, I've been told, up in a couple of weeks. We get that system up and running and bring it in-house and get our staff here trained to do it. So we're not paying one more penny out of the city than we have to. There needs to be an aggressive campaign led by the city to engage people in our water system and get people thinking about this. This should include a public forum to educate residents about the water system, what's been going on with the water system, like what have been the problems, what are we doing to fix them, what are the investments we're making. We're making significant investments in our water system which need to be made. People are going to be paying more for water even under our public system because of these investments, and people need to understand why. And I think that the city needs to engage more people in understanding this really great asset that we have and doing that. We should provide opportunities for residents to tour the water system and community organizations to bring people together, to bring people closer to that water system so that we can gain a better understanding amongst New Brunswick residents of what this system is. Because I think that we would stop taking this system for granted and be better watchdogs of the public to make sure that you're keeping an eye on our water system, our water director, the mayor, and everybody else to make sure that we don't get in this situation again. Excuse me? I just want to add one more thing and then I'll go. Thank you for granting me that. I also think that the city needs to start exploring public-public partnerships. We have a lot of capacity that we've developed with our water system. The private water companies have been able to leverage us into these private water deals because they basically have accrued so much market space in the surrounding areas. The city of New Brunswick is in an opportunity now that we can provide technical expertise to municipalities to take back their water systems from private water companies, that we could be in a position to actually providing public water to places where these private water companies are coming. And that would create more revenue and stability for the New Brunswick water system moving forward. Thank you.
Just in case there's any confusion, the city will continue to have control of the water utility. We don't give out that control. We still will be in charge of the maintenance. We're going to continue doing the capital improvement that we started. That is very expensive and something that is needed. Our staff, nobody's been laid off. Everybody's is going to stay with us. So we are looking, and the mayor, I know, is starting to look like Mr. Walsh mentioned. For somebody who have the licenses required for us to come back and continue be able to be the sole ones that is in control of the water, in order to be able to do the distribution and the treatment of the water. We don't have anybody. So at this time, we have no other solution. If anybody has another solution, unless we hire somebody, which we are going to do, and to me, the sooner the better, but it takes time, because those are professional licenses that it's not that everybody has. It's difficult. But we are, believe me when I tell you that I know this council is very concerned. We want to make sure that we get the people here. We have looked at some of the things that Mr. Walsh has said. Mr. Walsh met with the mayor 2 hours. So I know they talk about all of these points that what we're trying to do. And so that's why to me, although you call it entities privatizing, we're just having to have somebody who can manage that part of the water department that the city at this time is not able to do. But in no way we want to privatize the whole water utilities department. Just be clear of that. We are not doing that. This is just an emergency that we needed to find a solution, and we haven't. That was the best solution that we could have. And it's my understanding that we looked, and people that know, they agree that this is the best solution at this time for the city, in order for us to continue, which is still our priority, to maintain the water quality and provide the services to our residents. Name and address, ma'am. Thank you.
My name is Susan Miller. I'm from 249 Delavan Street, New Brunswick. My first question is, okay, what exactly was the emergency that precipitated this decision?
We have somebody, the director left. It's no longer with us, and he holds those licenses, I believe. And then there's another employee that shortly after left also, who has, he's the other person that also have the licenses. It's a T4 and W3, I think it is, W4 licenses in order by the state, in order for the city to be able to manage and treat the water and distribute the water that we have. So without that, we have to shut down if we don't have somebody with those licenses. So this is something that
Yeah, I mean, that raises the question why you can't just, you know, have some kind of temporary interim contract until you can hire somebody.
That's what
with a
it's
license.
like.
No, but I mean, a really brief one. I mean, how long does it take to hire somebody?
45 days.
License?
This is 45 days until we
Okay.
are
Okay, well, the question is though, during that period when American Water will be issuing these licenses.
No, usually, they're all the operators. They will be the
Okay.
ones assisting the city because they're all the operators.
Okay, I mean, will they be subject to control by the Public Utilities Commission? Or is it still considered a city water utility and therefore not
It
subject
is a city.
to the
It's a
control?
city.
Okay, so it's not subject to the control of the Public Utilities Commission, even though there is a private entity involved in running it?
Just for those 40, Mr. Hamilton, would you like to, so that way
We're subject now, and we will continue to be subject.
to that?
Yes.
And the DEP also approved this plan for the city.
No, the city water is not subject to the regulation of the Public Utilities Commission. Absolutely not.
She's talking about rates, she's correct. If she's talking about anything else, we're subject to all the requirements of the state of New Jersey relative to the quality
Yeah,
of
but
water.
you're not regulated by the Public Utilities Commission. I know that, because I had to look into it for personal reasons, okay? It is not true, okay?
So what
Absolutely
is,
not.
what is your concern, ma'am?
Okay, my concern is that any move toward privatization is a move backward in time. I mean, we don't need private entities getting involved in the control of our water supply.
I agree.
And I think that we all agree on that. This is a situation that we just have to do something in order to continue operating the water department.
And how do we know that after the 45-day period, the complete control will be returned?
The 45 days that we have is the preliminary MOU that the city did, that the mayor did, in order to be able to, right away, being able to provide those licenses that we need in order to continue providing the services to the citizens of New Brunswick.
Okay, and I also-
After those 45 minutes, there's going to be, they're going to sit down, 45 days. After the 45 days, I wish it was minutes, 45 days, we are going to, the mayor is going to sit down again, and they're going to start looking into what is it, if we need more time, and how much would that time look like? So it could be up to 12 months. Mr. Hamilton, you want to say something? I mean, Mr. Laughlin.
No, I was going to support what you're saying. This MOU tonight is a temporary, short-term arrangement between the parties where the W4 and the T4 functions are being provided by American Water. All of the other functions that you spoke of are under city control, including the rate structure, customer service, the billing office, the distribution department, the maintenance department. The only thing we're buying is supervision and the licenses in the water treatment plant process. But what the MOU also says is that both parties are going to negotiate in good faith an agreement beyond the 45 days to the extent that both parties need to have that agreement. And so yes, you're voting on the MOU tonight, but there very well may be a successor agreement that lasts another 12 months, but it may look different than the MOU. It'll require staff that we don't have, that the DEP requires us to have.
At this time.
Okay, well,
The MOU also acknowledges that we're out actively looking for a water utility director who possesses a W4 and a T4 and possibly a licensed engineer as well.
okay, but what I don't understand is why the departure of these people was so quick that you couldn't replace them before they actually left.
I just want to say, for the public's knowledge, the last time we hired Mr. Marasha, we authorized Mr. Lockton to go out, I don't know if the term would be hedge hunter or whatever. We hired a special person to find us somebody like Mr. Marasha. People don't understand, these licenses, there's 85 or 90 people, I'm told, that have these licenses in the state of New Jersey. There's a very, very shortage of these licensed people to do the water. And we went out of the natural way to get a good guy. We're gonna, I believe Mr. Lockland is gonna do, we're gonna authorize him to do the same thing maybe. We're gonna go that far again to get somebody so we can move quicker on this, to have somebody, find somebody that has the licenses. We're gonna have somebody, a search engine to search somebody.
He started the search, the search process started already.
Okay, but don't people have to give notice before they leave?
We just mentioned that he gave, Mr. Lockland said before that he gave, he stayed 5 weeks after the day that he said that he was.
And it takes more than 5 weeks to find a license.
Absolutely, due to the revision, it says, according to the experts, it's not easy to find somebody who had, like Mr. Egan just mentioned, there's only like 9.
There are 83 people in the state who possess a T4 and a W4, and a portion of them are retired. It is a very highly sought after individual, and it was not possible that we replace him in 5 weeks. And for a period of time, we didn't know we were losing the second licensed operator. He did not resign on the same date. He gave us 3 weeks notice. He extended his stay another 2 weeks. His last day was July 6th. The American Water arrangement took effect on July 7th. But it is not that easy. There are not people just sitting on the street corners with those licenses looking to be found.
Okay, isn't it possible to have made a partnership with another municipality?
We put an RFP out in June, asking for people to respond to the situation we were in, and that was a lack of a T4 and a W4. We asked 8 different firms, some were private water companies, some were engineering firms, and asked them to respond to the RFP. We got 2 responses. One said there wasn't enough time to put a proposal together. We got one from Middlesex Water, which was a 7-page critique of our system. They wanted $2.3 million to come in and provide the function we were looking for. They wanted us to shut down half the plant and buy 5 million gallons a day from some other private company. That was in total a $5 or $6 million cost. We rejected that as viable. When there was not a single viable proposal made, we sat down the next day with Middlesex Water and asked if there was a way we could craft a short-term arrangement where they could cover the licenses, satisfy the DEP until we got our legs back underneath us. We selected Middlesex because they at least took the time to make the 7-page critique of our system. We're physically connected to them via East Brunswick. We had a week's worth of conversation with them, and the thing went bad. They would not move off their numbers. They would not move off their requirement that we shut half the plant down and buy purchased water from someone else. So at the end of the day, the mayor spoke with American Water. It was not, I know I'm not going to convince those who think there's there's an under-the-table thing here. This was not a Frank Marasha handoff to American Water. It did not play out that way. It's not what the intention was. At the end of the day, we're grateful. I will say I'm grateful that American Water can cover the period of time that we are without license. And we're only asking them to provide the service that is missing, the T4 and the W4 licensure. And yes, they are looking at our SCADA system, which Jim Walsh referred to. It's the vital signs of the plant, but they're being monitored 24/7. There's nothing wrong with that. That is a positive, that someone licensed is looking at the vital information coming from the plant. American Water knows what's coming down the canal in terms of water quality. We take water from the same source. They give us a heads up to what's coming down and how you might need to alter the treatment system or the treatment process because of what's coming down. If you look at the canal now, it's nothing but muddy water like the Mississippi River, but we're still producing clean drinking water, and they're giving us the added value of, at the moment, of letting us know what to expect. It's, quite frankly, with the departure of the two individuals, there was very little opportunity to do something else, particularly when no one responded to the RFP.
Okay,
Ma'am, you have one more,
okay, I just want to ask one other thing. How is it possible that there are only 83 licensed people in the state of New Jersey?
There's 83
when there are over 400 municipalities?
Because private companies provide water to municipalities, as has been said here.
And they don't have to be licensed? They don't have
Sure
to
they
have
do.
a single license?
Sure they do, but there doesn't have to be one license for every municipality.
Okay, so they
There are
share it.
83 people, sorry. There are 83 people who have both licenses.
Okay.
And that's straight from the DEP.
Okay, but then you could have separate people, one with each lot.
That is true.
Okay, so it isn't necessary to depend on those 83 people.
thank you.
Okay.
Oh, so when does town meeting change? When does he be president of the town meeting?
The council, here in the council case, the mayor doesn't come to the council.
Yeah, well, what do you do if you have to speak to him personally?
You need to, we have some representatives here from his office, but you could call the office and make an appointment
Okay,
with him.
now what you do when you have written him and he doesn't respond to you and you went into the office and you can't get an appointment or date to see him or a time to see him. It's a problem with issues within the city involving certain people that he can't respond to, and I can't understand why. When he was written letters and he was given other things, and he can't respond back to me. I mean, like, could I have your card, so if I have any problems, maybe you can get me to him, yes? Or someone here?
At the end of the meeting, I will give you that information. Okay?
What time do you know?
Oh, as soon as everybody finishes, it depends on how many people, but if not, I will give you Jennifer, where's Jennifer? Oh, Jennifer is here, Jennifer Bradshaw.
Okay, because it seems...
Just talk to her, and she will give you some information to follow up.
It seems to be a problem with Mayor Cahill, where so when a person writes in, and when a person comes into his office, and when a person asks for an appointment, a date and time, that he won't respond to him. It's a problem. So, okay, thank you very much. Where's the young lady that's going to give me?
Right there, with that red jacket.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, state your name and address, please.
My name is Natasha Marchik. I'm treasurer of Take Back the Tap, a subsidiary of Food and Water Watch. I'm not a resident of the city of New Brunswick right now, but I currently live in Manville, New Jersey. I'm a student at Rutgers. And pardon me, I'm very short. All right. I just want to say that I have worked with Take Back the Tap, and one of our main goals is making sure that for the residents and students that are living in the city of New Brunswick, that they have access to safe water supply and where they know where their water is coming from. I'm just very confused at the fact that there are only a few parts, I guess you said, that are being maintained by American Water Supply for 45 days. In all due respect, why do we need to privatize anything at all? Water is a main resource that should be accessible to every single citizen, and it shouldn't be something that is just outsourced and bought out by other companies. I honestly feel that this is not even a political issue or any kind of issue like that. It is a moral issue, and I'm just greatly concerned with what's going on right now. And I feel that there should be a little more oversight than just simply saying, well, okay, let's just pass this bill. Thank you so much.
I don't know if you heard, but again, I'm not going to repeat it itself or everything that we have been saying, but we just having a long time with the library explaining, this is something that we get to do, so I don't think that that's the opinion of the young lady.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is James Jacob. I live Hampton Club. My question goes in 3 categories. My first question, since I've been in New Brunswick since 1981, and like 4 times they come to change the meter, water meter, by increasing the money of the waters. And they don't let us know when the money is going to go up, going down. The same thing like PE, ES, and D. The system in this country is killing the minorities. My question is this. This gentleman mentioned canal. Why they can't bring the borehole, the people that are digging the canal, and make more water for the canal, so that the water will be enough for the city? Because if you go to Radical, you will see it's all full of mud. It's a thing, they can dig the canal and make more water. The same thing they did in Elizabeth when the ship was sinking, they went there and dig it so that the water will be warm. Even when it rains, it will be enough. The same thing in New York. If we don't have reservoir water, what they're talking about American Water Corporation, what they mentioned now. Where are they going to bring the water from? Somerset? Because in Plainfield, the water is not good there either. Because when you drink water in Plainfield, you drink it like a drinking half mud. But when they profitize the business, it doesn't make difference to the water system. Because number one, if they dig that water, the city can still control the amount of the money they make in profit every month. But if they go and bring somebody from outside to do the water for them, what is the possibility that the city will make profit too? According to what they said, public, New Brunswick, keep New Brunswick water public. That's what the city wants. If they put it on the foot, I'll vote against the privatizing company. That's all I have to say.
Good evening, my name is Brian Kulas.
It is.
Okay. My name is Brian Kulas. I'm a resident in New Brunswick. I live at 10 Landing Lane, apartment G. And I came here out of more curiosity. Honestly, I have to admit, I don't know that much about water. But I did see the sign posted on certain areas, 27 on all the billboards that they had. And I was curious. And basically a couple of questions. I am hearing more about this management and this licensing and its difficulty to pursue the right employee, for which it sounds like you guys are trying. But basically, within contracts, there's always fine print. And things do go wrong with the water system, unfortunately, it could be due to storms or anything like that. Is there any type of release of authorization that in this contract, that in situations like this, this company, American Water, has more leverage to make the decision rather than the city of New Brunswick, even despite it more just being a management issue?
Mr. Langley, I know we are in control of maintenance and everything else they're just doing, but if you want to elaborate on that.
I can't speak to the fine print in the agreement. I can tell you what the intent, again, is that American Water, for this short period of time, is providing T4 coverage, W4 coverage, and at the moment they're providing a shift supervisor who is has a T1 or a T2 license and is working one of the shifts with 2 of our operators. The agreement also says that both parties are to engage in good faith negotiation on an agreement beyond the 45 days. And that is about to continue, about to start. There's been some basic conversation about what's going to be in place beyond August 1st, but this council will have to act on that, whatever the successor arrangement is, if there is one.
Okay, my next question was, it sounded, I'm not familiar with all the terminology, but was there any open bidding presented to the public? And I mean, I know you mentioned Middlesex Water and stuff, but was there an open bidding advertisement for independent companies to contact New Brunswick directly put in an offer, state what it is they were willing to charge, what it is they like to do. Was that put in place?
Mr. Larkin spoke about that there was an RFP, which is a request for proposal. That's what
Okay.
it was-
All right, that answers that question. And finally,
And 8 companies, no 8 more companies, 8 companies. We have 8 responses.
8 companies,
Some of them were.
a couple were engineering firms who
The
have,
other ones were.
and on a positive note, I'm assuming that the contract is signed, that there will be, I'm hoping, considerable savings rather than just hiring a new employee once one can be found. What does the city plan to do with that savings? I mean, I'm sure that in the event of that, there could be a large amount of savings, and what could you guys do productively, sorry, I can't say that, for the city with any type of savings? I mean, on a good note here.
I don't think there's any savings in this, in the 45 days. At this time.
Well, I mean, you mentioned in good faith that there might be a succeeding contract. I mean, I'm sure it would still be beneficial to the city to hire one employee.
Well, that's what we're looking at. As soon as, yes, it's gonna be beneficial when we get somebody, we
Right,
hire somebody,
understand.
absolutely.
Oh, okay,
But right now,
I'm sorry.
that's to the best, that's what we wanna make sure that we have in-house, that we don't have to do this, because at the long run, it's gonna be beneficial for everybody, and it's cost savings.
Okay, I thank you for your time and, your responses.
Thank you.
Adam Ujalko, 5 Woodward Street. I'm not unsympathetic to the city's position that this is a stopgap measure intended to keep the water running. But my question is, what is the public's guarantee that it is indeed just a temporary measure? And how do we know that these good faith negotiations aren't going to go on indefinitely if we don't find the licensed operators we're looking for?
Well, what I could tell you is that after the 45 days, anything else that if there's going to be extended or any other agreement is going to be signed, it's going to come to us. So at that point, then the public will have a say on it. And I know that, so we will have it here, you will have the opportunity the public to come and comment on it. So.
In the event that we're unable to find new licensed operators and we do have to extend the contract, what can the public even say about it? If not having the licensed operators is the reason we have to enter into this contract in the first place. If the city's unable to secure new operators, what is there to even talk about?
It is something that I need to step one of the extension of the contract. Like I said, we are doing everything possible to have somebody within the city to do that. But there might be the possibility, because it takes time, that we might have to extend it. And at that point, we're going to be in the same situation that we're now, so we will have to probably have to extend it, because it's either that or shut down the treatment plant, which we don't want to do. But at least it gives, in any case, you will still have in your post, you will still come and express your opinions on it. If you are for it, you can come and express your opinion on it. So either way, I understand what you're saying, because if we're going to be in a couple of months in the same situation that we're now, you always might feel that they don't have anything to, any changes will happen, because we're going to still, the city will still need the T4, the license. We don't have it, and we might have to extend it. But I think that just because of that, the commission come anyway, just to express however they feel about it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Matt Smith. I'm a resident of Livingston Avenue. And I think it's very tempting for us to look at this very short-term window and say that, we need these specific licensed operators to come in and focus the conversation only on that. But this is a much bigger conversation. It's about a complete lack of oversight around our most basic essential resource, which is the drinking water of this city. In the last 45 days, we've seen cover-up of failed water quality testing, so exposing New Brunswick residents to potentially contaminated drinking water. Now we've seen a situation where the city was completely unprepared for a situation that arose. I find it hard to believe that we're responding this late to a situation where we know there's only 80 some odd operators in the state. And where was our due diligence in exploring potential alternative options before this situation arose? I would also like to say that I think it's very concerning that due to this lack of seeming oversight of the water system, that we're now rehiring the same employees for twice what they were earning while they were employees of the city. And I don't understand how we got ourselves into this position, and where is the oversight? If we look at cities throughout the country right now who are dealing with problems that are being compounded by privatization, such as Detroit, as soon as you give over control to a private water company, we lack the ability to say who gets clean water delivered to their house and who doesn't. And we have a legitimate water crisis where now the UN is going to have to intervene in Detroit, in an American city. And I see the writing on the wall. I see it here in New Brunswick. We have an aging water infrastructure. Doesn't seem like the council has control over the situation. We're getting ourselves into emergencies. I want to know what's being done in the long term, the bigger picture, to restore confidence in the public that we can trust in our drinking water and trust in the people who are supposed to be responsible for it.
The action of one person doesn't reflect on the whole great employees that we have in the water department, first of all. The other thing that I will tell you is that nobody can foresee when somebody's leaving, decides to resign. Somebody decides to resign, if the notices, you know, if we would have known, then we
That wasn't
would
my
have
question.
sure.
My question was why
But
we
I'm telling
prepared
you,
for that.
no, again, nobody knows when somebody's going to resign. We're not ready for them to resign. We were caught by surprise. And I think that the city is making the necessary changes. We are changing a lot of capital improvement in the water treatment facilities. We are doing everything that we can with Mr. Marashko. He's only one employee. Mr. Marashko is the only one that works, that I just found out with the American water. There is the only one. There's no employees. It's only one employee.
I read that there were two.
Oh, it's incorrect. It's only one, Mr. Frank Marashka, and the only way we don't hire him here, he is part of the American water, and I believe that he's going to be involved with us just at the beginning, just to the transition, right? And later on to transition when we get somebody else to be able to help that person to transition into the position of helping out. And he will be only 1 day a week.
For the first week,
for the first week,
Mr. Marasha provided W4 assistance. That has now been transitioned to someone else in American Water. Mr. Marasha is giving us 1 day of transition and advisory services. If there are now two people formerly with New Brunswick over at American Water. Mr. Smith left for the town of Butler. There was reference to a third individual, a gentleman who had a T1 license. He's leaving the state and doesn't believe he can commute to work. So that is the nature of the three people leaving. 30 days ago, I guess your point is that we were ill prepared for this. 30 days ago, we had 2 W4s, T4s, gentlemen in their 40s. We had 3 T1s, those folks studying for the T2 licenses. 30 days ago, we had a nice team in place. Mr. Marasha, as he put it, was given a offer of a lifetime, and he accepted it. He felt it was going to be a shorter commute. It was more money than he was earning here. He was eligible for company bonuses, which the city of New Brunswick doesn't provide. He felt he wasn't going to have to work weekends occasionally. He wasn't going to have to take phone calls at work. He was going to spend more time with his family. I apologize, we didn't see that coming.
Makes it very attractive for these licensed water operators to go to private industry, and they've created that environment intentionally. And guess who's going to pay for those bonuses? We are. So my point is that we need to be better prepared for these situations in the future.
Good evening once again, Charles Cradaville, 6th Ward, New Brunswick. I do want to talk about the RFP and the agreement, but first I have to say that it is absolutely disgraceful that the council passed the entire consent agenda without letting people speak on it who clearly wanted to. That is poor form, that's a bad practice. Madam Council President, I respect you very much, and you generally run the meetings very well, but that was a mistake. If any time somebody comes up here with a guitar, you just pass the entire agenda, that's not an effective city government. We deserve better.
I understand that's your point of view.
Thank you.
I'm asking to play later on at the end of the meeting if you want.
And I have two numbers I'd like to do. No, I do want to ask though about the RFP process. There was a deal proposed by Middlesex Water. Is it true that that deal was affiliated with an employee at New Brunswick Water Utility?
I don't know what you mean by that.
What is the entire point?
Affiliated, what do you mean by that?
Was there an employee who worked at New Brunswick Water Utility who would have been in a similar way that Frank is involved, Mr. Marasha, excuse me, is involved through American Water? Was there someone at New Brunswick Water Utility who was potentially going to be a part of that Middlesex Water deal?
Do you have any knowledge of that, Mr.
I know that in the middle of negotiation, Middlesex had a conversation with Keith Smith about Keith Smith joining them as an operator. That did not happen.
Okay. And can you tell me why Keith Smith left the New Brunswick Water Utility? It was very clear why Mr. Marasha did. Why did Mr. Smith leave?
Do we know the reason? That's a personal matter, so I don't know if he...
I will just say in his letter of resignation, he said that the commute to Butler would be superior to what the commute was here. He lives in Newton, and that he owed it to his family to take that position, I believe is how he put it.
Anything else?
Yes, when Mr. Marasha left, did he ask for a raise? Was he offered a raise to keep him?
Mr. Lockman, Mr. Lockman.
Yes. He did not ask for a raise. The mayor authorized me to speak with him about a compensation package that would have been superior to what he was earning at the time. Mr. Marasha said, don't even bother, I appreciate it. I'm not leaving here for financial reasons only. So he rejected any attempt to talk about, if you will, a counteroffer.
So the answer is yes, Mr. Pratt.
Okay, I think that it's incumbent upon the city council to look into why these people are leaving. If we have, no, I said there were reasons beyond just finances.
You just said
So, family, commute, I understand. Yeah, but there's 4 people actually, that are all leaving at once. And I stand with Matt that that's fishy, that you need to look into that and find out what it is that made these people want to leave. Mr. Marasha was a good guy. I think he might have been too good at his job, and that's why he's not here anymore. I think that if you read the OSHA reports that Mr. Marasha asked for, that it was an unsafe place to work with low morale and poor compensation. And those things are identified by the state government. We need to fix those and look into those things. I think that's important.
Obviously, it wasn't financial because we offered him more money and he decided not to take it because that I spoke to him and he says that he wanted to spend more time with his children, with other community. So,
right. I think that needs to be looked into. And so it was mentioned that the Middlesex water deal was not viable because one of their requirements was that a large part of the plant be shut down and water be purchased in bulk from other places. Is that not an item in the American Water contract?
Mr. Larkin.
They mentioned that, but they also say that we are going to continue to operate the gravity filters until there's a time that they are not capable of being compliant, and that is not the case. We are operating the gravity filters. There's 8 of them. Half the water in the plant, half the water that enters the plant goes through a membrane system. The other half goes through the gravity filters, and we are treating water in those in that fashion today.
And it's correct to say that not all of the gravity filters are working, and not all of the membrane filters are working. Is that correct?
I'm not the interim director, as you well know, so I don't know exactly the case, but there are 4 gravity filters of 8 that are being utilized. There's a plan to refurbish and rehabilitate all 8 of them. 4 of them are working fine right now. There's Evoqua, as you saw on the agenda today. They are the Siemens, formerly Siemens. They're in the plant the next 2 days doing some modifications to the membranes. I'm told those modifications went very well today. So I can't tell you that there's the membranes are not fully operational. I can't say that. I don't know the answer to that.
So it's not clear whether they're fully operational or not. No.
He just told you that they are operational, that there's 4 working, that he's not the interim director, but right now there's 4, they're fully operational. So,
And so,
5 that are operational.
5 out of 8, okay. And so I want to clarify something with the RFP. How many responses did we get? Was it 8 or was it 2?
He said 8. 8 people and 2 that actually completed their whole, scope, right?
8, the RFP was sent out to 8 concerns in the state of New Jersey. We received 2 written responses which said we declined to make a proposal. The 3rd proposal, as I said, came from Middlesex Water, and it was a combination of a critique / proposal, in my opinion.
Mr. Cardinal, your time is up.
Okay, so just to be clear, there were 2 proposals submitted. The Middlesex was the only one that was remotely viable, and it was...
Two were submitted which said they chose not to make a proposal.
Yes.
We received a letter from 2 concerns that said they were not in a position to make a proposal. The third response was from Middlesex.
And just to be clear, American Water did not submit a proposal. This was not done through the RFP public bidding process. That's correct, right?
They submitted a letter which said they didn't have the adequate time to make a proposal.
Okay, so this was not done as an open public bid. That's concerning to me.
Thank you, Mr.
That's all I
Cardinal.
have. Thank you.
I first want to start off by saying, just the way you guys passed that resolution was disgusting on all your behalf. It shows your obligation. It shows who you're obligated to, and it's definitely not the people. Just for you to just do that was disgusting. You know, and for you guys to, I mean, I know if you guys had the opportunity to run for office, I know a lot of you guys are handpicked, and you guys had the opportunity to run for office, you wouldn't treat the public like that. A man came up here with a guitar, and you passed a resolution that you had a personal interest in. You pass it, so that means that if I have interest in a resolution that you guys have to pass, all I got to do is bring the person with a guitar, he start playing, you'll pass it for me also? I'm just saying, because if that's a tactic, I'll do it. That was a question.
I'm not going to answer your question, Mr. Friedman, because you know what happened. He was out of order, and
Okay.
I said if he had a question. So that's the fact. He kept on saying that he was going to...
Okay.
Kept
So-
on going, I kept asking, and everybody was disrupting the meeting.
Okay.
And I just...
Passed it.
We just
You just
asked
passed
for
it.
a motion, and we passed the resolutions. But what is your question, Mr.
My question
Friedman?
is, if I have a resolution that needs to be passed, and if I bring a guy with a guitar, and he starts playing and disrupting the meeting, will you pass that resolution?
Mr. Friedman, I am not going to answer that question. What is your question?
That's my question.
Next question, I'm not going to answer that. That passed already.
Okay, all right.
So next question. Don't waste your 5 minutes.
Okay. I was made aware of, this is a week ago at a general conversation, and I'm not sure, and I don't know for a fact, that's why I'm here, I'm going to ask, but someone brought to my attention that, Tom Lockton, you were director.
Right, divert those questions to me, and you know the process.
Tom Lockton was temporary director of the water department for a short period of time. He received an increase for that position. He no longer operates that position, but still takes advantage of that increase, that pay increase.
That's something of personal matter.
How is that personal?
Well, that's the
That
first
is-
time, it's not,
that is- that is-
that is not, go ahead, Mr.
That
Knowles.
is correct. Mr. Cradaville asked that question months ago, and I answered the same way. That is correct. My salary was not reduced when I no longer had an acting water utility director responsibility.
Is that considered theft?
No,
Right here, Mr. Pittman.
I don't consider it theft.
So
Mr. Pittman, directly.
morally, wouldn't he return that money?
What was the question?
Morally, wouldn't he return that money?
I don't know if he was given any, were you given any other extra responsibilities? I wasn't part of what is his responsibilities side.
My salary was not reduced when I was no longer the acting director. I don't consider that theft. Nor apparently did the mayor who authorized that.
I don't think you ever will.
Thank you.
My name is Mike Andre. I live in Brunswick. And I also work for the water utility. Now you guys are here talking about the water back, water this, and water that. You gotta realize, New Brunswick got the best water system there is. We have two ways to make water. We have the filters, the membrane, and we have the gravity filters. Okay? Now you asked a question about that. We have 3 sets of cells. I'm sorry. We have three sets of cells and the membrane that is working. We have 5 gravity filters that are working. We are working on our water at all times, 24/7. Okay? We are there. Mr. Lockley has been there for us. You know, when we needed something, he gave it to us to work on. Okay? It's not like that he's turning his back on the water system. You know, it's like this is what we need to really keep New Brunswick supply of water. We have 2 sources of water, which allow people to ask about water. Okay? We get water from Denham Canal. We get water from Fountain. New Brunswick got the best system there is. You got water coming in 2 ways. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lauren Petrie, 124 Bayard Street, also organizer with Food and Water Watch. I wanted to let the council know, as well as the mayor who's not here tonight, that we've been out here talking to folks and businesses in the community over the past few days about this. And many people have been reading about it in the newspaper or informed in other ways besides the council and the mayor letting them know what's going on with the water. People are not happy about this. We've been talking to businesses for the past few days, and we have a sign-on letter from businesses throughout New Brunswick that have signed on to a statement of opposition to the privatization of New Brunswick's water. Basically, the statement reads, "We, the undersigned groups, right to express opposition to any form of privatization of New Brunswick's water system. We ask that the mayor and city council oppose any contract with American Water or another private company for the operation of the city's water distribution system or treatment plants. We also ask that the mayor and city council resolve to support public operation and management of water services. Privatizing water systems often results in worse service at higher costs. Privatization sacrifices local public control over an essential service. A privatization deal will limit the city's ability to control the cost and quality of water services. The city, as well as the company, will be bound to the terms of the contract, and the city will need the company's permission to change that contract. This can hinder the city's ability to respond to changing circumstances and protect its residents. Privatization can lead to degraded services. There's ample evidence that maintenance backlogs and lamentable customer service often follow privatization. In fact, poor performance is the primary reason that local governments reverse the decision to privatize and resume public operation of previously contracted services. Private operators may attempt to cut corners to cut costs and maximize their own profit. They may use inferior construction materials, delay needed maintenance, downsize workforce, which impairs customer service and slows responses of emergencies. On average, after privatization, operators usually cut 1 in 3 water utility jobs. And privatization can result in higher costs for the public. Corporate profits, dividends, and income taxes can add 20 to 30% to operation and maintenance costs, and a lack of competition and poor negotiation skills can leave local governments with expensive contracts. Perhaps for those reasons, a review of 18 municipalities that ended their contracts with private companies found that public operation averaged 21% cheaper than private operation of water and sewer services. Responsible public operation and management is the best way to ensure that every New Brunswick customer has access to safe and affordable service. Thank you for your time and your consideration of this important issue. I have copies for each of the council members. I'm not sure who to hand that to. Thank you.
Say it again, the city continues to have the control of the water utility. We are in charge of the cleaning, customer service, our employees are not being laid off, they will be part of it. We do all the payments, so we will continue to do all of that. So I'm pretty sure that if somebody doesn't have the whole, all the information, when they read that might be concerned, but I dare to say that if we go talk to these owners now, this is not going to give them the right information of what they would agree that the city is doing the best, has the best solution at this moment.
Okay.
So, but I just wanted to say that we are in control.
The operation will be privatized though.
The treatment plant, yes, because we don't have
So it will be
licenses.
privatized, thank you.
No, it will not be, in your definition, yeah, in your world, it will be privatized, not in mine, but go ahead. You're gonna give
Okay,
it.
so we live in two different worlds, obviously, with our
That's
definition of privatization. So we've also collected hundreds of petition signatures from residents just walking around at events and at farmers markets. Throughout the city, we've collected hundreds of petition signatures. People are not happy with the idea of privatizing the city's water system. I also would like to read a letter from the New Jersey State Council of the Utility Workers Union of America, who represent American water utility workers in Pennsylvania. Dear Mayor Cahill, I'm writing on behalf of the New Jersey State Council of Utility Workers to urge the City of New Brunswick not to approve any agreement for American Water Company to manage the city's public water system. We understand the city recently signed a temporary 45-day contract with American Water to manage the system at a cost of $120,000 and with little or no public input, and that you are proposing to sign an even longer deal with this profit-driven company. We represent utility workers across the state of New Jersey in water, electric, and gas utilities in both the public and private sectors. In our view, any decision to turn over management of the city's public water system, one of the community's most valuable resources, to a private for-profit corporation would clearly be against the best interests of New Brunswick residents. Under any water privatization scheme, the corporate manager will inevitably place investor profits ahead of the interests of the community. Indeed, utility workers have firsthand experience with this company's track record of placing profits first ahead of all other concerns. In October 2012, a judge for the National Labor Relations Board ruled that American Water illegally slashed health care and other benefits for 3,500 utility workers in New Jersey and in 14 other states across the U.S. The company still owes hourly employees millions of dollars in damages from this case. In Pennsylvania, more than 140 utility workers are coping with the loss of family-supporting paychecks because of a work stoppage provoked by American Water's unfair labor practices. Even though the dispute has now dragged on for 4 weeks, management has done nothing to reach a good faith resolution so these employees can return to their jobs delivering essential public services. I therefore urge both you and the members of the City Council to reject any contract for American Water to manage New Brunswick's water system. We believe that a public water system should be managed in the public interest and not for the benefit of private profits. One more thing. Since Spook Candy was prohibited from delivering his public testimony in the form of a song, he will be performing that in the hallway at the end of the meeting because clearly there was a lot of public interest for that. Thank you.
I would like to tell them, if nobody, anything else, I'm ready to take a motion to.
Motion adjourned.
What? No, I just asked.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
Did you ask? I said that everybody else.
What
I wanted to know was, I was told that right now you're only dealing with the water issue.
No. Everybody, the public part, this is the public part, no, that's what I'm saying, everybody else? Okay. No, that was part of it, this is the public.
We were under the impression that everybody.
No, this is the open public, so, okay.
Withdraw the motion.
Okay? Yes.
Am I allowed to speak?
Name and address.
Timothy McDougal, I'm from Somerset. As we spoke before, I haven't been here in a while, but We spoke about the complaints that I filed against the 2 New Brunswick officers who planted drugs on me, and ultimately I got the case dismissed, yada, yada, yada. And you told me to go through the hearing process. So I listened to what you said, and I'm going through the hearing process, and I'm here to show that, of course, it doesn't work. It isn't working. I presented my case to the hearing officer Hoffman, I believe like 2 months ago. Charlie Gagan was there, and I presented a pretty strong case. I presented 2 witness affidavits supporting my case of what happened that night. I provided Charlie Gagan and the hearing officer with copies of the notarized witness affidavits, and I've been waiting to get a response, whether I was going to get a recommendation for IA to reopen the investigation or what. And not too long ago, I got a letter stating that a bunch of garbage. Basically, I feel as though they, because I feel as though Charlie, all of them were working together to kind of prolong my decision. And he's kind of like throwing me through the hoops. In other words, he's asking me to, he's basically ordering me to provide a summary of what my witnesses will say before internal affairs interviews my witnesses, but he didn't order or he didn't recommend that internal affairs interview my witnesses. He just suggested it. Like, he just made a simple suggestion. My thing is, I presented my case. I want to know whether or not I'm going to get a recommendation. He sends me back a letter, sending me a whole bunch of nonsense. Basically, I feel as though ducking the decision. It clearly states in the Attorney General guidelines that in the internal affairs investigation that all witnesses must be interviewed. I proved without a reasonable doubt that my 2 witnesses were never interviewed. But when I was interviewed by Internal Affairs from the beginning, I told Sergeant Shaw that I had 2 witnesses. He disregarded that. He never interviewed my witnesses. He never asked about them, no nothing. He just made his decision based on that. And of course, he exonerated the officers. So that clearly shows right there that, he violated, what he was basically supposed to do. There's Attorney General guidelines that clearly states that he's supposed to follow that procedure, but he didn't. So since I showed that to Hearing Officer Hoffman, he should give me a recommendation for Internal Affairs to reopen the investigation and do what they were supposed to do from the beginning. But now he's telling me that I should give him information. He's basically trying to do the job for them, and that's not his job. His job is to recommend Internal Affairs to open the investigation one way or another. And to me, it's like, they're throwing me through a bunch of hoops for no reason, And I've been...
Mr. Would like to address the...
Yes, I would. Mr. McDougal's complaint goes back to, I believe, 2009. And at that time, I think his hearing was held sometime in the municipal court in 2011, at which time it was not dismissed.
Yes, it was.
Okay, Mr. McDougal, please let's maintain the conversation. Let Ms. Gagan answer because we were quiet listening to you, so let's keep the process. Thank you. If you disagree, say something after Ms. Gagan has done.
Okay, because she's giving a long, drawn-out story. I'm trying
But
to, get to
Mr.
the point.
McDougal, she needs to, some of us, I know it's a long process, but this will help us to see. She's trying to give us a perspective of everything that is happening. So please allow her to finish her sentence and give, because now we won't be able, and we only have 5 minutes tonight to talk, so we want to use them wisely, right? So
You're right.
I would appreciate if you allow Ms. Gagan to finish this thing. Thank you.
So, as I was saying, at the time of the municipal court hearing, he appeared with counsel, Mr. Beach, who's the public defender, and he entered a plea. And a plea is just simply from the criminal charge, he pleaded to disorderly persons offense, and he paid a fine. And Judge Hoffman, at the time of the hearing, on May 15th, we listened to the recording of the proceedings for that night. At the time of the hearing, Mr. McDougal presented with 2 affidavits from 2 witnesses that he said that he had spoken with Officer Shaw about. I did not listen to the Internal Affairs interview because I am not a fact finder. Judge Hoffman is. So Judge Hoffman went back and listened to the interview with Officer Shaw and Mr. McDougal. And I think that was the right thing to do because Mr. McDougal said he had witnesses. Officer Shaw said he didn't remember that there were witnesses. So the judge did the right thing and went back and listened to the tape. On the tape, he did hear Mr. McDougal say that there were 2 witnesses. Judge Hoffman then sent me an interim report, which I received about 2 weeks ago. 2 days later, I forwarded that report by priority mail to Mr. McDougal. Tonight, I saw Mr. McDougal outside. I asked Mr. McDougal, did you receive my letter? He said yes. I said, well, you understand that we only have a certain amount of time, 30 days, that the judge wanted to have that information back to us, the names of the witnesses and their address, so that the police could properly interview them. On the affidavits that he submitted at the time of the hearing, there was no address for those people. So in order for us to reach out to those people so that we can interview them, we need to know their information. We also need to know a proffer of what they are going to be testifying about. If they're just going to be testifying about anything that happened that has nothing to do with Mr. McDougal's complaint, then their testimony would not be relevant. But as the hearing officer, as the fact finder, he needs to know what they're going to be testifying about. And all of that is laid out in Judge Hoffman's report. Mr. McDougal has 30 days to get that information back to us so that the police officer can do their internal affairs interview. And we're waiting for that information from Mr. McDougal. So this process, the first process with Mr. Shabazz took a long time, but this is his process. Now, we had the hearing May 15th. We got the report about 2 weeks ago. I sent it back to him, asking for information, so the process is moving along.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mr. Maduro, that I know that the process is, I think when I said the process is working because you're getting, even though it might not be what you expect at the moment, but the process is following up with what you need to do. So what is your concern with this, getting this information to the hearing officer?
First I wanted to say, Charlie, you talk, we love to talk. But
address your question to me, please.
okay, but my thing is, my internal affairs investigation has been completed, has been closed. Why? I mean, he's requesting information from our witnesses, but shouldn't internal affairs be doing that? I mean, what does he have? I thought his job was to basically find out whether I got a fair or improper, fair investigation. And if I didn't, then he should be giving me a recommendation for internal affairs to reopen the investigation so that I may get a fair investigation. He's requesting all this extra stuff, and for the information, I feel as though I already provided that. He's asking me for a summary. I gave you witness affidavits. These people wrote what they seen on a piece of paper, and they stamped in it. We got it notarized, and I gave that to them.
They have addresses, Mr. Mantulo, the addresses that they will go back to, that's what he's asking.
I don't need no address. My thing is, why is he telling me to, my thing is, if internal affairs, his job is to recommend internal affairs to contact me to get the information, right? I mean, it seems like he's trying to dance around it. It seems like he's trying to do their job for them now. So, if they would have did that from the beginning, we wouldn't even be here.
Yes, hold on.
You cannot cross-examine a piece of paper. You have to have a person there in order to ask questions.
He's not there to cross-examine. That's internal affairs job.
Mr. Mantulo.
Yeah. So,
Mr. Mantulo, you have 1 minute. We stop in I'm sorry, Ms. Gates. We stop in the clock every time there's Ms. Gates is knocking, so you have more time. You only have 1 minute. Like I said, let's use it wisely and let's listen, because maybe there's something because we might little thing that I don't know much about this, but is it that you want the internal affairs to call you to give, so the internal affairs could interview the witnesses? Because you said that they failed.
I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. I didn't hear you.
You stated that the witnesses, you have to provide the information, and then now Judge Hoffman is requesting the information so he could,
so that internal affairs can
follow
the
Why is he
protocol
requesting
says.
it? Why is he requesting it?
because he's the one listening to
I thought that was internal affairs job too.
So let's do something,
Can
let's
I
do
just
something.
finish?
Sure.
One second. The protocol says that the police director will ensure that a thorough investigation takes place. They cannot do that unless internal affairs does their job and interview the witness.
My
That
case has to be
ensures-
reopened
Mr.
first though.
Batuga,
It's
Mr.
already
Batuga,
closed.
Mr. Batuga, let's listen. Let's listen.
The interview of the witnesses will ensure that a proper investigation takes place. And if you will recall, the protocol was for those people between 2003 and 2011 who believed that they did not get, number one, either did not get a fair investigation or were a little apprehensive about bringing their complaint, had not filed a complaint at all. Mr. McDougal had filed a complaint with Internal Affairs. They investigated it, but he was not, he fell in that category of people who were not sure that they got a thorough investigation. So that brings Judge Hoffman into it. He conducted an interview with Mr. McDougal. Mr. McDougal says, I have witnesses. Officer Shaw says, I don't think he did. He went back to listen to the tape and said, yes, there were indeed witnesses. Now it falls on Mr. McDougal to give us the information regarding the witnesses so that Internal Affairs can continue their investigation of those witnesses and his complaint. We can't do it otherwise.
So if internal affairs needs to continue their investigation, doesn't my case need to be reopened? I brought the paper, it shows, it clearly states that my charges, the case was closed and the officers were
What
exonerated.
date does that have?
It has July 29, 2013.
That was 2000, it has to be reopened.
It has to be reopened.
It is.
Thank you, that's all I want.
want.
Reopen my investigation
reopened.
so that I may provide the information to internal affairs. It's not reopened.
It's only when you have let's regroup for a second here. Let's regroup.
I didn't get no recommendation from Officer Hoffman. You keep referring to him as a judge. He's not a judge, he's an officer. He's a retired judge.
Let's regroup. Let's go back and let's listen to what the cross. Let's go back and listen. Mr. Hamilton, you have something to say?
Seems like there's extra things being added along the way to deter me.
Let me finish. Hold on for
try
a
to-
second, please. Thank you. Yes, Mr.
Just wanted to say that the procedure that was established is that there would be a hearing officer appointed. He's been appointed. He's running that hearing. Ms. Gayden and Mr. McDougal have to follow what he says. If when we get all finished, somebody's not satisfied with what he did, they can take the next step. But right now, Judge Hoffman, as Ms. Gayden said, is doing what she should have done, found out that there were witnesses, trying to get them in. It's the only way we can go with this
It
thing.
is my understanding that once you, the case is reopened, once you came back because you were not satisfied, you were in that category of, am I correct in stating? Once you fell in that category of people who felt that they were not, that there were cases were not investigated truly, once you open this new investigation with the protocol, actually the hearing, with your case, it's open. It's open.
No, that's not true.
So that's what we did the process to
May I say one thing?
That's not true. What case he's talking about?
What case are you talking about?
What?
Yes, Mr. Madden.
My internal affairs case, my place has been closed since
By
2013.
bringing forth your complaint to the hearing officer, it reopens the investigation. So I don't understand what you mean when you say your case needs to be reopened. It is reopened. By bringing forth a complaint, it's reopened.
May I
You wanna
interject?
My thing is, I thought the hearing officer,
Interject one thing to this.
He's almost done because his minutes are done. He has only 30 seconds and then you could.
I thought the hearing officer's job was to give me a recommendation whether or not to reopen my investigation, my internal affairs investigation. My internal affairs investigation is not open, it has been closed for quite some time now, over a year. So what investigation are you talking about that's open? This is something totally different, separate. My internal affairs investigation has been closed.
That's right.
It's not open. And that's why I presented my case to the hearing officer so that he can give me a recommendation to internal affairs to reopen it. So that they can properly give me an investigation
That makes no
and
sense.
review my, why doesn't it?
It makes no sense.
Because it's not fair. And I wrote a letter for the council too that I got notarized. I'll leave it with you.
Just because, and just, I think there's a misunderstanding, if your 5 minutes are up, but, I think that we need to talk to Ms. Gaten and maybe explain the process again.
I talked to Ms. Gaten the other week and she hung up on me.
So what we do is,
She
let
hung
me,
the phone up. We
so,
were having a little conversation back and forth. She hung
so
up. I don't think she
we'll come back to you, Mr. Matuga. Thank you.
Before I end this, I brought a letter for the council for you to review, and I brought some letters basically stating that, my case was closed and, you'll see.
Thank you, just for that.
If he doesn't want to do it with Judge Hoffman.
He's not a
That's
judge.
why-
If he didn't want to do it
He's a
with
hearing officer.
Let Judge Hoffman.
He's not a judge, he's a
That's
hearing
what-
officer.
Listen,
Out of courtesy, I call him Judge Hoffman.
I just
Mr.
wanted,
McDougal doesn't want
He's
to
your
comply
judge,
with
he's
that.
not my judge.
listen. I don't wanna go back, because there's people here. Excuse me. Let's have a conversation. If we can, I don't wanna go back to the same thing. You 5 minutes out, thank you for your 5 minutes. Please leave the items there.
Who should I leave it?
To the clerk. Thank you. And if, at the end, I think that you need to, we need to talk, and so you could understand the process, because I think there's somewhere, there's a
I understand, I'm following.
But thank you.
You
But
told me
we'll
to
talk,
follow.
absolutely. But we'll talk. Thank you. We'll talk.
Thank you.
Mr. Maduro.
Brenda Chavez, Somerset, New Jersey, and I'm going to continue with what Mr. McDougal was speaking of, because I think what's being misunderstood here is that we have the protocol. My husband went through the process that failed him terribly, and is now trying to fail Mr. McDougal, and we're frustrated. So number one, the protocol said that the hearing officer is to conduct a hearing and determine whether the complainant received a fair and proper investigation. He makes a recommendation to a recommendation, not an order, because he's not a judge. He's making a recommendation which Internal Affairs can deny, okay? And whether the case should be reinvestigated because the original investigation was not proper. Mr. McDougal proved he had 2 witnesses, according to Attorney General guidelines. You know all of this. They were never interviewed. All the hearing officer needed to do was, after he heard Mr. McDougal state that he did have 2 witnesses, is say, well, according to the Attorney General guidelines, there was not a proper investigation. I recommend that the New Brunswick Internal Affairs reopen it and conduct a proper investigation, and then Officer Hoffman is relieved of his appointed obligation by Mayor Cahill. Now, what Ms. Gaten is trying to have you believe is that Officer Hoffman needs this information to conduct an investigation into this new information, which is all irrelevant to his position. In my husband's decision, Officer Hoffman said he is not to conduct an independent investigation. So how does the rule now change for Mr. McDougal? And now he needs to know his witnesses. I'm not going to go into the whole scope, because I'm sure that my husband's going to also, I'm not going to waste my 5 minutes. I want to say that from the beginning, this process has not worked. It's not designed to work. We're tired of it. I would like to know, when we came here before and we presented our concerns, our frustrations, and we made recommendations to remove Ms. Gaten because she's biased, to remove Officer Hoffman because he was obviously incompetent, what did you guys do?
Well, I know
with that information?
At the time with Mr. Shabazz, and I always been very vocal, I know there were some things that we could have done better in the process.
Okay.
Because I think, and I always say that it was the first experience that we have, but I think there was, that's why I still believe that Ms. Gaten is competent. I don't think she's biased. I know that it's something that I cannot change people's perception, but I'm just talking about me in that sense. I think that is maybe it's the explanation of the process, or maybe we're looking at too much. The process is simple. To me, it seems like it's a simple process, but somehow it's getting, I don't know why it's getting complicated in between. And that could be from our part, it could be from the part of those who are putting, I don't know. But what I do know is that the process that is the best process that we could have, and I believe that Ms. Getting is doing the best job that she can in doing this, and she has been doing it.
If I may, I respect your right to your opinion, and I disagree. But my question was, after we came here before and we expressed that the process did not work, what did the council do?
I know I told Mr. Maduga, I said, Mr. Maduga, because he was here too that day, the last time, and I said, let's do your process, do as everything you should, as, you know, with Mr. Chavez, there was a few things with him, I said, go through it, and let's see how it works.
Okay.
It seems to me that it's working, and if it's not working, I will look into it and see why it's not working.
Well, and that's still not the answer to the question that I'm asking, maybe I
Well, what I'm telling you is
didn't
to go
articulate.
back and revisit the process.
When we came for my husband's result, and we expressed why we felt the hearing officer did not do his job properly, what did you do after that? How, did you look into it? Did you have a conversation about it? Or did it just end here when we left?
No. With me, I know that since I always said I've been vocal, I said, I wanted to make sure that the process, you know, that we don't have the same hiccups, I call it, if you want to call it, that we have with Mr. Chavez. And that the process with Mr. I even asked about Mr. Matuga, and then Mr. Matuga has not followed up, and then because he has some family challenges, some issues, and I said, follow up. So I know I have looked into it, I want to make sure that it worked, that we do it. I am confident that Ms. Gating is doing the job that she was assigned to do.
But I don't understand how you can be confident in that when everybody disagrees with you and you're not the one going through the process. They are.
But that's what I wanted to go through. Mr. Matuga hasn't finished the process yet.
Mr. McDougal has actually, if the process was done properly, he would be done. Because the hearing officer was just to make a recommendation, forward it to the police department, and then they would either honor the recommendation or deny it. That's where we should be. He should have a decision that says, Mr. McDougal presented me information, Mr. McDougal proved that he had witnesses, the Attorney General guidelines state that those witnesses have to be interviewed. The Sergeant Shaw could not remember, so obviously they were never interviewed. Reopen the investigation. He's done. Now let Internal Affairs take care of this. It's simple. No, but now they want Mr. McDougal to give the information to the hearing officer who is irrelevant to investigating anything according to the protocol. No, the hearing officer is not to investigate anything. Internal Affairs is to interview those witnesses.
Okay,
Maybe there's a breakdown in communication here. Judge Hoffman is not doing an investigation. Mr. McDougal, we asked him to give us that information so that we can convey that information to the police, so that the police, Internal Affairs, could do the investigation.
Okay.
Not just,
fair.
excuse me, I didn't speak while you were speaking. That's what has happened. We reopened the investigation so that the police officers can interview those witnesses. Judge Hoffman gave us the recommendation. He said, listen, I think these witnesses need to be interviewed. That's the proper thing to do. Because I listened to the tape, and he did say something about witnesses. So police officers interview these witnesses. So the investigation is reopened. So I don't understand, I really don't understand how after getting Judge Hoffman's report where he's asking the police to do the investigation of this claim and the witnesses, that Mr. McDougal and Ms. Shabazz can say that the investigation is being made by Judge Hoffman. That's not what we said.
And the witnesses, the Judge Hoffman, you only have names.
I only have names on an affidavit. And you can't do an investigation based on an affidavit. You actually
Internal Affairs
discourse.
Yes.
Okay, then my next question would be, why is it relevant for Officer Hoffman to reserve his decision on whether the investigation should be reopened or not after hearing from the witnesses? The witnesses' statement, whatever it is, pertains to the incident that Tim McDougal complained about. It has nothing and no bearing whatsoever on whether or not Internal Affairs did their job properly.
Simple as that.
I don't understand that.
Can I try to reiterate it?
You have 2 minutes to do that.
If the hearing officer's decision as to whether or not internal affairs conducted an investigation cannot be made until after the witnesses are interviewed, how is that relevant to the investigation? What the witnesses have to testify to about that night in question when he encountered those 2 police officers is neither here nor there regarding whether or not internal affairs investigated it properly. They did not properly. It doesn't change anything. Internal affairs did not properly investigate because they didn't talk to the witnesses. Now, the outcome of whether Mr. McDougal did something wrong that night that the witnesses can support it or not is irrelevant. That's my point. Internal affairs did not do their job. That's it.
So
the guideline says interview witnesses. They did not do that. Therefore, they were negligent.
Okay, that's what you want us to say.
I don't want you to say anything. I want you to do what's right. And now, if you want me to tell you what I want you to say, I want you to say that you're a bunch of incompetent, wicked people that will do anything to destroy the people. That's what I want you to say.
I just want to say that I understand the frustration, but let's keep it to a level of respect, please. We are not, I don't want to go into that, a standard discourse and a respectful discourse. I'm Mr. Shabazz.
Well, first point I want to address is I have Mr. McDougal's report, hearing report from Officer Hoffman, hearing Officer Hoffman. And he's an ex-judge. The same way an ex-wife loses her position as a wife and no longer has that status, she's now a single woman. He's an ex-judge, so he no longer has that status as a judge. He's just a regular civilian, now occupying the position of a hearing officer in a little informal hearing that y'all put together. So we need to clear that up where he's power tripping. Let's go on with this. In his report, he says, before I render my report, and if I'm talking loud, pardon me, but I have an ear infection, so it's actually hard for me to hear. Everything sounds muffled to me. So if I am talking loud, pardon me. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. Mr. Hoffman says, before I render my report on the fairness of the total IA investigation, it is suggested, a mere suggestion, that the New Brunswick Police Department Internal Affairs Unit interview these 2 witnesses. Mr. McDougal must cooperate and give the names of each witness together with their respective contact information. Furthermore, in advance of the interview by the IA unit, Mr. McDougal should give a short summary of what each witness will prompt. The purpose of this last requirement is to see whether the witnesses have relevant first-hand probative information. The aforesaid condition shall be completed by Mr. McDougal within 30 days of this receipt of this interim decision. Upon completion of the interviews, I would like to receive a copy of their statements or be able to listen to any recording to determine materiality. If the interviews spur further investigation, I will await the results before rendering a final report. Meaning before he renders a final decision. So he has not rendered the decision to reopen the investigation. Number one, if y'all really understood the process, which y'all do not, we understand the process. The council does not understand the process. And the lawyers are liars and they are manipulating you. So let's be clear on that. We can further go on and you will see that she's trying to convince you that the hearing officer is conducting an investigation. Yes, he is, with a limited scope, a very limited scope. He's supposed to investigate to determine whether Internal Affairs conducted a proper investigation. That's it. His investigation is limited to whether Internal Affairs conducted a proper investigation or not. Nothing else. He's not investigating or assisting Internal Affairs in investigating Mr. McDougal's allegations. In fact,
I have my hearing report from Mr. Hoffman where he states, and if you want to see it, I'll give it to you. Scope of review. He tells you what the scope of the hearing officer's review is. And he says, the protocol, she always likes to quote the protocols, and she lies and manipulates, publicly lies. And y'all do nothing about it. I catch her in lies and tell you and prove to you she lies. I got videos of her lying. And y'all do nothing about it.
Exactly.
Mr. Hoffman says the protocol did not call for the hearing officer to conduct an independent investigation or act as a super internal affairs unit.
Exactly.
First line in the scope of review in his hearing report. Would you like to see it for yourself?
Please.
Yes, please let her see. Scope of review.
This is your case?
Yes. Yes, sir. And he clearly indicates what his scope is limited to. He's not an investigator dealing with internal affairs. He's only supposed to determine whether internal affairs did a proper investigation. The Attorney General guidelines specifically state that as part of a proper investigation, all witnesses must be interviewed. Must be. It's not officer's discretion. Sergeant Shaw has no discretion of whether he interviewed Mr. McDougal's witnesses once he told him he had 2 witnesses. He had to do it by law, or he's violating the law, which he did. It's clear. So I get tired of these crooked-ass lawyers lying and manipulating people who don't know the law. I know the law. They can't tell me nothing. I'm better than any of these fake lawyers over here.
Mr. Shabazz. Can I have a copy of this so I can have, maybe, so you, so that's not this not, that's your copy. Can I just say the paragraph? If I could get a copy of the paragraph. Mr. Shabazz, you have, 22 seconds.
22 seconds, huh?
Yes, sir.
All right, no problem. No problem.
Tonight is like,
No
so
problem.
many people that we're doing just.
After my hearing, because some of my 22 seconds were just wasted, so give me some extra time.
No, we stop. We stop.
All right. Council President Escobar and Councilman, when I had my hearing, it took years to go through the process. You told me when the process was over, you gave me your word that after I went through the whole process, if I was still dissatisfied with the results, the council will make serious review of the process, and since the council does have the power to make those changes, I requested that you make changes. You haven't made any changes. Now, Mr. McDougal has went through the process, and it has failed him also. That's 2 times in a row the process has failed. You hear the community liaison officer blatantly lie in public. What are you going to do about it? That's what I want to know. What's going to be done? Keep your word. I gave you respect because I thought you were a woman of your word. You either going to prove me right or wrong, because I've been told by other strong community activists that you're not a woman of your word, but I gave you the benefit of the, I'm just telling you what I was told, but I gave you the benefit of the doubt, and I said, well, she seems pretty fair to me. So what I'm saying is, this is your opportunity to prove I was right or others were right.
I was, Mr. Shabazz, whether people believe that I'm a woman of my word or not, whoever, that's, you know, that's their own opinion, everybody, and that's fine.
Well, I mean,
It doesn't hurt me, but I thank you.
The facts are proven now, right?
I thank you because I always say that you have one person that I respect because of the way you behave in this.
And I respected you also, but I need to see.
And I did with you, you know, that I was always open, and I said what I said, that I know there were some things that I did not agree on how things happen, the process. And you were there when I asked Mr. Badugo, please, let's see if we are going, the process is going to continue.
He's getting the same results with the council president.
This is what, so let us, you just came today. I think I still have some questions, but I'm going to talk to Mr. Badugo after the meeting in terms of the process. But if it doesn't work, obviously it's 2 cases, then we have to look at and review and see what is it that is not working.
Well, I just showed you part of what's not working.
That's what I want to ask you.
He's overstepping his bounds in order to cover up for the crooked cops.
I don't know if he's doing that, but
well, let me ask you this.
Everybody's in the same page.
Let me just ask you this. You do see the fact that he himself stated he's not to conduct an investigation. That's not what he's supposed to do. So that then proves that Ms. Gay was lying.
No,
correct?
What she was saying,
she said he is supposed to do that, and that they are conducting an investigation.
Trying to change the rules.
That's not what he's supposed to do.
But Ms. Gavin, what she was, I don't know if I heard correctly. No, we almost done. We almost was, what she said it was that they need the information to give it to the internal affairs to conduct that investigation.
Now, that's my
separate.
point. And it seems like my point is keeps going over your
Well,
head, and
I hear you.
Let me just finish this point. It seems like my point is going over your head, and I know you to be an intelligent woman. So this can't go over your head. Just let me get this out, and you will understand it. If not, then you will let me down because you will be pretending to not understand it, because this is clear common sense. The hearing officer's job is only to review the case and determine, did internal affairs do a proper and fair investigation? That's it, right? Now, good. So stay focused on it. That's his role, that's his scope, nothing else, right? So he doesn't get to cross-examine witnesses. She keeps saying he can't cross-examine the paper. It's not his job to cross-examine the witness. It's not his job to talk to the witnesses. He has nothing to say to the witnesses. Mr. McDougal's whole case is based on one principle. Let me finish. One principle and one principle alone.
30 seconds.
The Attorney General guidelines specifically state that as a part of a proper investigation, all witnesses must be interviewed. It's that simple. You can't get around it. Now, Sergeant Shaw did not review all witnesses, which she admitted after they listened to the tape. So, if he didn't interview his witnesses, he failed to do a proper investigation. Yet he closed the investigation and exonerated the officers. He has the document right here that says his investigation was closed and the officers are exonerated. The purpose of this hearing process is to try to get the investigation reopened, and you get it reopened not by him sending an interim decision. You get it reopened because he lets you have your hearing, he listens to all the evidence presented, and based on the facts and evidence, he makes his decision. Was it fair or was it not? Was it proper or was it not? Now, the fact that we all acknowledge that his witness just didn't get interviewed, and now they're trying to go back after the fact and interview the witnesses without giving them the formal recommendation. He hasn't given a formal recommendation. He's making him jump through hoops and making him. And look, he didn't even order internal affairs to review the witnesses, so we don't even know if they are going to interview the witnesses. He made a mere suggestion, but he's trying to get his man orders. And he's not a judge. He has no judicial authority to order him to do nothing.
Okay, Mr. Charles, I got the message.
Come on, you got to be honest here.
No, I got it.
He's being railroaded.
Thank you, I got the information. I put it right here.
I just want to hear you admit that the Attorney General guidelines do say as part of a fair investigation or proper investigation, all witnesses must be interviewed, and they acknowledge that the witnesses weren't interviewed. So doesn't that mean a proper investigation didn't occur?
That would sound to me like it wasn't done properly.
Exactly. Thank you. Now, once we reach that determination, you see how easy you reach that? That's how easy the hearing officer should have reached it. So then the next step is only for him to say, you know what? They made a mistake. Sergeant Shaw said he didn't even remember him saying it. They made a mistake. You know what? I'm going to give you the recommendation. Internal Affairs, I recommend you reopen it and now interview his witnesses. Instead, they're trying to interview the witnesses without giving him his recommendation.
Thank you. I'm going to look into it. Anybody else that has a chance to talk?
At its worst, man. Corruption at its worst.
I just need a few minutes. First, I wanted to apologize. We're getting tired. We're getting really, really tired. And I try not to raise my voice, but I'm going to always say what I feel. So I do apologize, Ms. Escobar. You've always been very respectful. All we ask is that Mr. Hamilton made a point to say that there's or Ms. Gaden, I can't remember, there's a time period. There's only a time period because the officer put that time period there. I don't think that it's given the time period that Mr. McDougal had to wait, I think that can be extended with no problem, so we're not even going to worry about that 30 days. What we want you to do is to review this tape, go back, take the information, and we would like for the hearing officer to instruct Mr. McDougal as to, or give his decision. If Ms. Gaden said the investigation has been reopened, then as far as we're concerned, Officer Hoffman's job is done. He can send a letter to Mr. McDougal saying, I made the recommendation, and when Mr. McDougal hears from the Police Department Internal Affairs saying, we received the recommendation from Officer Hoffman to reopen, and we have accepted that recommendation and we will reopen it. Please forward us the information to your witnesses. Mr. McDougal will provide it and not until. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did y'all give me back my,
I have a copy, yeah. You have it, I have a copy. Anybody else before we adjourn? Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to say that, you know, a comment that I wanted to make before that I forgot to make is that the behavior of the council is an indication of its quality. And the behavior of this council tonight was undemocratic, it was corrupt, and it was cowardly. Okay? Now, we're going to meet again in 45 days. I want to know whether you're going to behave in the same way.
Well, I think that we behave according to what we have been very respectful. When people doesn't want to listen to what we're telling you, there has to be an order in order for us to conduct the business.
This isn't.
And I understand, and believe me that I am a very advocate, and I know when the community comes here, I think it's important for the residents to hear. But we need to adhere to the protocols and procedures of the meeting tomorrow.
Okay,
So it's something
there was
that-
one person. You can't, basically, you can't cancel all public comment because one person is out of order.
We have the right that if we're not able to conduct our business and we don't, we have the right to continue and even to adjourn if we have to. But thank you, and hopefully,
No, thank you. No, thank you. I need an answer to my question. Do you intend to continue to behave in an undemocratic, corrupt, and cowardly manner?
I disagree with you that we are taking it, why act as the president in a democratic and cowardly manner, because I opened the floor, I was asking the person to just abide by simple rule, just to say what was his question.
That's not an excuse for holding a vote without finishing public comment.
We are the.
That is not an excuse.
Thank
You have no excuse.
Thank you, thank you.
I also wanted to apologize for raising my voice. You know, that's not me, you know, but I get kind of excited because I know what happened to me that day. And I was surprised to have that happen to me that day. And since I'm following the process, it's getting kind of frustrating. You know, there's not one thing, it's the other. So,
And I understand, thank you.
You know, but you know, I'm willing to talk. I'm willing to sit down. I know what happened that day. I have witnesses to vouch for my story. I mean, it's pretty straight to the point.
I appreciate that.
But I know it's against New Brunswick police officers, and not all officers are bad. I just want to put that out there too. We have good cops. I have a few friends that are police officers. My grandfather was a sheriff. So it's not against police officers, it's just those crooked ones. I know what they did to me that day. They framed me, they put drugs on me, they seized my money. I evidently, God don't like ugly. I beat the case, I got all the money back, and I just want some type of justice. You know, I want a fair and, you know, proper investigation. That's all we're here for. You know, but of course we get annoyed because, you know, we're going through so many hoops for something that's, you know, straight to the point. So I just want to express my apologies to you, and hopefully I'll be speaking to you soon.
Thank you.
All right.
I also, you know, I come to this microphone and I get kind of irate and upset. But one thing I won't do, I won't apologize. Because I feel like if you're going to have a condescending demeanor, that's disrespectful also. If you're going to look at me and entertain me when I come with valid concerns, and then you leave it, get out of that seat, and you go giggle amongst each other, I find that disrespect. So if I raise my voice and I shout and I yell and I cuss, I'm going to stand behind you. Because I know how you guys operate. I find that more disrespectful than anything. At least I'm giving you the real me. At least I'm giving you Tormel Pitley every first and third Wednesday. But when you sit there and you look at the public and you show who your obligation to, I understand you have to conduct business. You have an obligation to the administration, but you also have an obligation to the people. And they should be equally balanced. But time and time again, you showed that your dedication was to the administration and not the people. I know you're here to generate revenue for the administration. You sat here and you seen Mr. Lachlan admit to saying, yes, he's being compensated for a position that he's not even entertaining, and you didn't open your mouth. You're focused on who gets out of line and who yells and raises their voice too much. So Mr. Shabazz was talking about me, who told him to watch you. You're a snake. To watch you. You're a snake. And all you guys entertain the snakes. All you guys, and listen, I don't call people names until you give me the opportunity to. I call Mr. Councilman Fleming names because he gave me the opportunity. I call Councilman Egan the names because he gave me the opportunity. Out of respect for Councilman Anderson, he doesn't open his mouth. He's the smartest one at that table. He's yet to give me the opportunity, but everyone else has failed miserably. And you wonder why we get to a disrespectful point. It's because you initiated that. Now,
I just want to say before you continue, even though you have given me the reason to call you something else, you have always been and will always be Mr. Pittman. So I just wanted to say that. Continue.
Well, the guy who's, the guy who will be pulling the lever at the electric chair while he's strapping me down, they may call me Mr. Pittman. What does that mean?
I'm just saying that.
What does that mean?
I think you
What does that mean?
that I have manners. That's what I tell you. So go ahead, Mr. Pittman.
No, I just want to let you know that, our concerns are valid. And like Mr. McDougal said, there are good police officers and bad police officers. But this is the first, I go to different municipalities. I just had a meeting with Andrew Curry, the Middlesex County prosecutor, private meeting. I meet with different prosecutors. I meet with different police chiefs and different directors. This is the first council who will actually say out of their mouth, yes, there are bad police officers, but what about the good ones? I've never heard that in another municipality. So that means that you will acknowledge that there are bad ones, but you won't address that. Yes, there are rapists, but what about the good people? That's insane. I've never heard a municipality say that, and I've heard you guys say that over and over again. And that's the sickness that you guys don't even recognize that you have. And it's up to us to address it. And it's up to me. My job is not to get you to change. You will never change. My job is not to get you to change your demeanor. When you go to your car, you press that alarm, you're going to get in that car, you're going to turn the radio on, you're going to go home, you're going to kiss your kids, and you're going to eat dinner, just like as if nothing ever happened. And these people are going to walk out of this building with stress and agony in their heart for what's being done, that you're enabling the city to be done to them. So I don't expect results. When I come here every first and third Wednesday, this is therapy. I enjoy doing this to you guys. I'm sick if I don't make it to a council meeting. I'm having marital issues if I don't make it to a council meeting. I enjoy it. So the days I miss, I'm curled up sick. But the days I'm here, I get to sleep. Just like after the meeting, you get to go home and sleep good, so do I.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening. Once again, Charles Cradaville. Yeah. I wanted to say that the reason I'm so proud to be a New Brunswicker is everybody who spoke tonight and all the people here tonight. I'm so proud of the people of New Brunswick, and I'm just hopeful that we can be proud of the city and the administration one day. I do have one last question I want to ask about the water. Did anyone think to tell the two towns that buy our water from us, Franklin and Milltown, when were they notified of this privatization agreement?
Mr. Lockley, I don't have the answer to that question. I think Mr. Lockley knows when.
I don't have the answer to that either.
We will find out for you, Mr.
I was promised an answer yesterday at the Environmental Commission. The mayor's office representative was there. I asked the question. This is a simple question that should be able to be answered on 24 hours notice. Does anyone have the answer?
Who was there that you asked the question to?
Jennifer.
Yes.
I did say I would get the answer from Mr. Cradaville. I did not get it today.
Okay, thank you. So we'll make sure that.
I think we need to find that out. This deal was done definitely under the table, definitely a backroom deal, definitely behind the scenes, and it stinks to high heaven. Please, end it.
Thank you. At this time,
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Council Vice President Egan.
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming.
Yes.
Councilmember Garlotti.
aye.
Council President Escobar.
Yes.